Our next speaker is an award-winning researcher and applied development psychologist, specialized in midlife and aging. Aren't we all there? She's a TEDx speaker. She's the founder of the Mentor Project and has helped over 100 world-changing mentors, from top innovators to astronauts, to really find their legacy projects. So that's what we'll hear in our second half, how to find our legacy projects. She has been recognized a top global thinker by Thinkers 50 Radar, and she's member of the 100 coaches from Marshall Goldsmith. She has a TEDx that I strongly recommend you see, Rethinking Aging, Mentoring a New Generation. Thank you very much. We welcome Deborah Hazar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's been an amazing few days already, and getting to know you all is really an enormous pleasure. I'm hoping you'll come on a journey with me today. I want to go back to 2017 when I was having conversations, 3 separate conversations with good friends of mine. One of them was a corporate leader, and she was in a position where she was being called a dinosaur. She was being edged out for younger people who were entering the field. And she felt completely irrelevant. She was faced with a situation where this wasn't a strategy situation that she was looking at. It was an emotional situation that she was looking at. She felt like she was sucker punched. She felt like the wind was taken out of her sail. Who was she? Another person that I knew and was talking with at the same time, another good friend, was a researcher. And he had just retired. And he said, it isn't what I thought it was going to be. He left Bell Labs. He was a researcher. He did all kinds of amazing things. And when he left, everyone kept telling him, just go enjoy life. Go out, take up golf. You have a farm now. Take up farming, do fun things, go visit your kids in London and have some good times. And he felt empty. He felt completely that his value was taken from him. He didn't give it away. He felt like it was taken from him. And another person was an innovator. He lives in Silicon Valley, and he wasn't getting his calls returned. When he would call someone, they weren't returning his calls because they were taking calls from the younger people who were coming in with fresher ideas. And he felt like he was completely lost. So when I was talking with them, they're my friends. So this was an emotional experience for all of us. I felt vulnerable. Am I next? How do we do this? All 3 of them felt like they were at the edge of a cliff, and they didn't know what was in front of them. There were strategies and things that they could employ to do, but emotionally, they were in a place that they just didn't know where to go. So here we are in this place, having these conversations. And as an applied developmental psychologist and an aging researcher, I really knew intellectually what I could talk with them about. I've been doing it for a long time. But there was the emotional component that we really needed to dig into, because there's a sense of loss there. The loss of identity, the loss of purpose, and a loss of value. Where's my worth? I've worked so hard all my life. I'm a known person. People know my name. I've done things that people have, the Bell Labs guy has stuff in museums. There's something there that is a loss that's pervasive with all of them. So what I did was I decided to take a journey with them and form the Mentor Project. It was a movement to take a look at how we can change the face of mentoring. But I want to take you back a little ways. We're going to go back a little ways in this journey to the 1990s. And in this time period, I'm starting out in the field of aging, going guns a-blazing. This is a time when nobody's in the field of aging. It's like the Wild West. So there's so much that can be done. And I'm really excited. I'm doing a ton of work because there's a ton of work to be done. And I'm looking at really exciting topics like depression and Alzheimer's and palliative care and frailty. These were my research topics. And I was excited about them, and I figured the whole rest of the world would be too. So I'm writing books, I'm getting things done, I'm getting grants, and I'm doing everything that every academic should be doing. And I'm feeling really good about myself, like really good. And most people don't know where this came from. Most people don't, when they're little kids, don't say, I want to grow up to be an aging specialist. That's never been in any of the books that I've read where that's one of the options. But I had a grandmother. Many of you probably have had a grandmother that you knew, and I loved her. She was somebody who didn't care that I wasn't the serious one in the family. I was the fun one. I was the one taking a long time to get my 4-year degree because I was out having fun. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I used to visit her all the time. I'd go down to Florida on People's Air. I don't know if anybody remembers that. And it was the one affordable way that you could get down there back and forth on a weekend. I'd go visit her, and she always made me feel like everything I was doing was great. Didn't matter. Didn't matter. I was just having fun. One month I went down to visit her, and she was different. Grandma, my whole life was amazingly fun. There was a party with her anywhere. You could open up a shoebox. There'd be a party and she'd be in it. I went down and it was completely different. She had what we now would call like COVID hair. She had like 3 inches of white and then red where she had dyed it. She wasn't dressed nicely. And when I said to her, Grandma, what's going on? I said, do you need some of your favorite books? No, I don't want to read. Do you want to go out to eat? No. How about we go get your hair done? No. So I went to the person that was at the independent living facility and said, there's something wrong with Grandma. And she said, I know, she's depressed, but we're going to fix her. Now, I don't know that she said, I'm going to fix her, but that's what I heard because my grandma was broken. And so I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, depression is something we can treat. She's going to be better. When you come back, she'll be better. Don't worry. I came back a couple months later and Grandma was better. It didn't even take long. It turned out she was on a medication that they needed to change. And she was better pretty quickly. So better that she had a boyfriend named Wilbur by the time I got back there. It was, she was living her best life in the independent living facility. And I said to myself, aha, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to study aging. I'm going to fix grandmas. I'm going to go out and do this. So here I am in the 90s, feeling my oats. I'm out there making a difference for all the grandmas out there. And I'm going to a conference. We went, I don't know, like 8 times a year at least to conferences to present. And here I am at one, and I can't wait to talk about all my work, all the stuff I'm doing. I mean, who isn't excited to hear about depression and Alzheimer's disease and palliative care and frailty? So I sat down and I waited for my turn to come around. Everybody's talking and saying what they have to say. And my turn comes around. I tell them all the stuff I'm doing. And the room is somber, completely silent. And I'm thinking, wow, this wasn't the reception I expected. And a guy across from me said, "So, what you're telling us is that all we have to look forward to in life is depression, frailty, Alzheimer's, and death." And yeah, and I was completely floored because I had never looked at the other side. I was looking at one side of a coin, and it's the tiny side of the coin. Most of us don't live in that uh, in the area that was affected by what I was studying. So I went back and I said, "Oh my goodness," I had like an identity crisis, and said, "I need to change how I research. I need to look at what is positive, what gets an 80-year-old up in the morning, what makes people get excited to live long lives. It certainly isn't a life looking forward to frailty." So I invite you to take a look at these. Pretend that I'm your financial analyst. Yeah, you should be laughing. And I'm presenting you with two stock portfolio options right here, okay? And which one would you choose? Who would choose A? Who'd choose B? Yeah, I would too, right? So that really wasn't a stock portfolio option that I was showing you. This is our lifespan. So everyone says no, they don't want A. That is physical ability. Yet when we think about our lifespan, this is the one we always choose to think about, is our physical ability across the lifespan. And as you can see here, there's a steep incline and then a very steady decline that goes through the rest of our lives. Now, who here says this is what I want to look forward to? Nobody. Nobody says, "Oh, good, that's for me." And there's reason behind that. You know, I teach at a university in Long Island, and every semester I teach a class on prejudice. And I ask them, "Tell me all the words that you associate with old age." They eagerly raise their hands and they say things like walker, depression, Alzheimer's disease, smelly, and none of these, I don't know why that comes up every semester, but these are not words that we want to be associated with. And these are not words that we want to see as our future. So these students all say, "Yeah, I want to grow old. I love my grandparents. I think, there's a lot of stuff," but then it turns out this is how they think about it with these words. And they're not alone. There's the Harvard implicit study. I don't know if anybody knows of that. It's an amazing study. It's online. And it's one that I would suggest that you take. You can find out, you can look at a whole slew of topics to find out if there's bias, if you're biased in one of those areas. And one of those is aging. And what they do is they take faces that are older in pictures and pictures of faces that are younger, and words that are negative associated with aging, and words that are positive associated with aging. And they see how quickly people respond and pair up negatives. And what do they have? They have it most often that people pair up older faces with negative words. And this is the same thing that happens with my students when they take it. And so this is what we know, is that unconsciously we're thinking negative thoughts about our physical ability throughout the lifespan, and it's scary for us. This is really scary for most people. So um, what most people don't know, though, is that this one, which you chose for your financial future, is the one that we never choose for our lifespan development. This one's not talked about very often. This one isn't really addressed very often. And our emotional growth is one that starts the same place as our physical ability, but it never declines. And this takes into account depression and frailty and all of those other things. We are happier as we get older. Most people know that. The literature's been out there. We've read the books, Laura Carstensen, the Harvard longitudinal study, all of that. But what most people don't know is that our emotions become deeper and meaningful And these are the things that make us have the thoughts that, you know what, I don't care if I can't run as fast as I could when I was 15. I have amazing relationships with people. I have meaning in my life. I have the connections that I need that give me the emotional fuel to keep going. So when people ask me, they say, "Yeah, but what about when I get hit with frailty? Is that gonna affect things? I'm gonna move from this and it's gonna dip." Well, everybody in here, are you as fast a runner as you were when you were 20? I'm not. Do you think about that every you are, okay. So so if you are, aging, do you think about that slow, steady decline in your ability to run as fast as you could? I don't. I give myself a little extra time to get to the train, and I don't think about it. I wear reading glasses. This is something that one day I wasn't like, "Oh my gosh, I can't see." It was a slow, steady progression, and I need a little bit stronger one year after year. We accommodate. We bring in this information, and we adjust to it. So this, which looks like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going down a slide of doom," isn't really what happens. We're adjusting and accommodating, but while we're doing that, this is continuing to go up. So this is something that made me really think that we need to go on uh, a journey with my friends and talk about the emotional side of things because they were thinking they were on a slide of doom. So the answer that I gave to them in 2017 was one word: generativity. Generativity is a term that was coined by Eric Erikson, and he was a psychologist who looked at the lifespan and emotional development through the lifespan. And we're expected to hit this stage of generativity in our midlife. We're built to do it just like we are to walk and talk. We're built to want to be generative. So generativity is caring for others without expecting anything in return. Generativity is volunteering. It is mentoring and it's philanthropy. These are all words to us. Most of us are even engaged in these things, but a lot of us don't put the words to what we're doing. And that doesn't allow us to feel the meaning and to feel the connectedness to what we're actually doing and feeling. So I'm going to give you an example of volunteering. So Robert French, he was talking to me about how he goes out into Toronto streets and he helps people that he finds who need to be clean and want to feel dignity and want to feel pride in themselves. He goes out and individually makes a connection with somebody and he volunteers his time at least 3 hours a week. And he does this not for pay. This is volunteering. But the connections, as he was telling me about what he does, were deep. He wants to do it. Nobody made him do it. He gets pleasure from it. This is part of generativity. He was just doing it because he liked to. He was doing it because he's a good person. He was doing it because he had expertise. He's very empathic and can give that back. Mentoring is something that we can do that's free. This is something where every one of you is an expert in something, and you're able to give that back for free to others. And you do this without expecting anything in return. I'll get to mentoring in a minute, but there's also philanthropy. And everybody's heard about philanthropy, and most people don't make the connection, the emotional connection to it. They think name on a wall, name on a building, and that feels cold. That doesn't feel connected. But Rich was telling us about how when he retired, he used about $100,000, I think he said, to make trips with people that he felt most comfortable with. The top 20 people that he liked most. And when he talked about that, he wasn't just handing out cash, saying, go have a good time. He was saying, I'm going to go on that trip with you. I'm going to go visit you. We're going to do something together. And that is philanthropy. That's a form of that. That's a connection. And that's what we can deeply experience and is very generative. Those are all examples of generativity. And these are all things that we're all doing all the time. We're built to do it. A lot of people mistake generativity for generosity. I hear it all the time. I'll give you a quick example of what generativity is and isn't. So, generativity is giving something that generates something. So, generativity has the word generate in it. Generosity is giving an extra scoop of ice cream. You're being generous, you're giving something, but generativity isn't tangible. So, generosity is kindness, but without the connection. There's nothing further that gets generated from that. And generativity is not a tit for a tat. It's not like you do something, I'll do something. It's you do something for somebody, and that's it. So that's really when we're talking about generativity and generosity and how we give, when we're really intentional in what we're doing, it makes us feel like we are connected with people in our lives. So I like to think that we're wasting our most precious natural resources. Everyone is an expert. And those 3 friends of mine who I talked about were being wasted. They felt like they were being wasted. They never really got to feel like they were the most precious natural resources. Here they were holding the expertise that they had, and they didn't get to feel it until they started to see that they could give back and the ways that they could. So if I give you a couple of examples of how people have engaged in this, one of them is Bob Cousins. He is the guy who patented how we use credit cards in the internet. Every time you shop online, say thanks, Bob. He's somebody who made a big change. That's just one of his inventions, but it's the only one I can wrap my head around. The others are really too complicated. But he was out, I was having a conversation with him, and he was saying, hey, I would love to be able to give back. I'd love to be able to mentor, but I don't have any access to kids. I, I don't, my kids are grown. I don't have any grandkids. Like, I don't have any ability to give back. I don't know who I can give back to. And I thought, are you kidding me? We have a ton of mentees who are just raising their hands saying, someone please mentor me. And people write articles on how you can find your mentor. And here's a guy that could help people, and he isn't able to find anybody. So I thought, of course, well, it must be you. It must be that there's something wrong with you. There must be a way that you could be doing this, but you're not. And then he said, oh, I want you to talk to Bill Cheswick. He's a friend of mine. So I talked to Bill. And Bill is the guy who's one of the fathers of the network firewall. He worked for Bell Labs. He and Steve Bellevin wrote the first book on internet firewalls. And he was a guy who had a ton of stuff going on. And he said to me, I would love to be able to teach 4th graders quantum mechanics. And I said, wow, why aren't you doing that? And he said, because I don't know how to get in front of kids. I have no ability to get in front of kids. And then I said to myself, yeah, like these guys, they can't go to a park and say, hey, kid, you want to learn quantum mechanics? You know, like that's. So it's not a good thing. That's not what I would recommend for anyone to go and find a mentee. So these guys had a legitimate problem on their hands. They weren't able to feel generative. They had their expertise, but they were like, Daffy Duck on the big pile of riches, and they couldn't do anything with it. It felt useless to them. So we decided to form the Mentor Project, because what we did was we said, let's get you into the schools appropriately, and let's get you some mentees. Let's see what can happen. And that started the journey of the Mentor Project was Bill and Bob. So the Mentor Project started, and we really didn't think much of it, but we knew that there were legacies waiting to happen. I like to think of the Mentor Project as make a wish for mentors. What we do is we carefully curate a project that is tailored to the mentor. They don't have to get connected with somebody who's doing something that they aren't interested in. They don't have to get fit into a slot. So when we were thinking of what to do, Bob said, I want to get a ton of kids to innovate and patent. They can do it for free. That's an intimidating thing for kids. And Bill said, I'm going to get into the schools and I want to teach quantum mechanics. I want to teach rocketry. He had all these ideas. And so we said, okay, let's go. Let's do this. It was just a couple of us. We thought, all right, we could be just weirdos here. Let's see what happens. But we really wanted to test this idea out to see, is generativity real? Or are we just throwing words around? So I want to talk about legacy because we throw that around all the time too. And as a researcher, I get really excited by people who do stuff that gets put into peer-reviewed journal articles. And one guy that did that was Bob Lefkowitz. He's the 2012 Nobel laureate in chemistry. And he was talking to me about legacy. And he did something unusual. He created a legacy tree. So just like we have, ancestry.com, and we can all go find our big tree of relatives and how they all fit in, he was doing that with mentorship. So his tree was more unusual. He highlighted all the Nobel laureates. I feel bad for the people that aren't labeled as Nobel laureates in his tree, but this is just a tiny snippet of his legacy tree. So a Nobel laureate would do, published it, got into a peer-reviewed journal article. You can go read it. I also wrote an article about it. You could read that. But the important thing is, Bob went to a conference and some guy comes up to him and he says, hey, I'm 6th degree Lefkowitz. And he was like, what? And he said, yeah, I'm on your legacy tree. 6 people are in between us. And so when they started talking, Bob started to hear his voice in this person who was doing work 6 generations away from him. His work was being carried on. It wasn't like the wheel kept going. It was not like they started from scratch. But he was able to actually see and hear himself in this. And this to him was the most gratifying thing that he felt he had ever done. I mean, he has his Nobel Prize, but he understood that he mattered. The world changed because of him. The world was different because he was there. I like to think of George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. Does everybody know that movie? So he didn't know he mattered. He had no idea until the end of the movie when he saw what the world was like without him, what the whole town looked like. And then he was able to see that he made change, that he mattered, that his footprint was there. And that's what Bob Lefkowitz did. So we started out in 2019 on this. It's really it was like an anthropological expedition. We had a decision in the very beginning. Do we want to make this a for-profit or a nonprofit? What are we going to do with this little idea that we have? That probably all of you have these conversations. What are we going to do when we start a company? And we decided we really wanted to keep it like an organic development to see if we could see if this is how this really plays out in the real world. Is it just going to be Bill and Bob running around town, like mentoring people? Or what's going to happen? So we started out with $547 and we decided to just leave it there and see how much we could do with nothing, using just the principle of generativity, using volunteers, using mentors, and philanthropy. And right away, Bill and Bob were able to get into schools, and they had hundreds of kids who were already working with them and doing amazing things. And they were getting a lot of positive feedback from this. They were feeling pretty good. One of the schools named Wednesday's Ches Day. That's Bill's nickname. And so every Wednesday he would come and it was like, Ches Day. And they even made him like a rocket out of beeswax or something, and he still keeps it in his house, as a, work of art. And by 2020, during the middle of the pandemic, when we would have thought that it would have fizzled out, and we really did think it's gonna hit, we're gonna die out, 60 people joined. We didn't have any social media network that was happening here. There was nothing, no word being put out. We didn't do press releases. There's really nothing out there about us. But people were hearing word of mouth and they joined on. And that year alone, we had several thousand impressions around the United States. That year, we were able to get a National STEM Honor Society added to Robeson County, North Carolina, which is, I think, the third poorest county in the United States. Kids are now getting science there. 2021, it moved to 80 mentors. And we now were across the entire country, all around, and we were up to about 60,000 impressions around the country. 2022, 90 mentors. We're in 6 countries, and we go up to about 100,000 that we're able to impact. And 2023, we're just in the beginning, and we have more than 100 mentors, mentors who are astronauts, Olympians, Nobel laureate nominees. We have, we have a very diverse group of individuals who've accomplished big things. And the cool thing is that, like accomplished people, they have an impact that's really amazing. So Bill and Bob said, "Oh, we have to start an innovation lab that's like Bell Labs." And just, I mean, it's 2023, it's not that far into it. They have already 16 patents and innovations that they've gotten out in that short amount of time. It's just 2 guys. So they brought in more people into the innovation lab, more people hear about it, and they say, "Well, I want to join." And they have been. So we expect a lot more coming out of that. We've had international hackathons, and the kids get into Forbes and they get into other magazines, Scholastic, Nature. And the most recent one that I'm most excited about is Art in Tanzania. I got a call from an organization that represents a school and funds them in Sharati, Tanzania. And they said, "Hey, our kids are doing great. They're all going to college. We're doing some good stuff here, but we need art." I thought, okay, that's a normal thing. Somebody says we'd like something, we bring it into them. And it's all for free, by the way. None of this is charged. So we say, okay. I say, I know a guy. So I called Justin. And Justin, I said, "Justin, do you want to go to Tanzania maybe? I know you've done murals around the world. Do you want to go there?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, count me in." So I said, "Okay." So then I said, "Oh, by the way, it's going to be a really long flight. And then it's going to be a 6-hour drive after you get there. And then you're going to be staying in a house that probably doesn't have air conditioning. And you're going to need a mosquito net and about $1,000 in shots." And he was like, "Okay, I'm good." So off he goes. And he's there and he arrives. And he said, "I didn't understand when you said there's no art, that there really is no art." He stopped in the town, in the marketplace, and there weren't any handicrafts being sold. It was just things people needed. There were no signs. He got to the school and it was just brown walls on the inside and out. So if you imagine your classroom when you were a kid, you might have seen things like even ABC or 1, 2, 3 or something up on the walls. Nothing. He gets to the house and there's nothing on the walls. No art. So here's an artist in a place void of art. So he sets out and he creates a mural on the side of the school, and town people come out and they say, "Can I mix the paint? Can I put the paint up on the wall? Can I help you?" People are watching and looking, and it's exciting. He gets to the school in the afternoon and the kids are really excited about it. They are doing art. And then it turns out that as he's leaving, as he's getting ready to go, the entire town said that they wanted to continue with art. They liked it. So he's going to continue. He's going back again next year, and he's going to go back year after year. But one man in 10 days changed a community. And that's the power of generativity. That's the power of one person having expertise and how they can change the lives of not just one kid, but a community. And everyone in here possesses that. It's just something that's in all of us. So we had a really interesting side benefit that came out of all of this. Um, when we had all these mentors together, they wanted to get to know each other. They got excited. There was a whole lot of imposter syndrome that was happening also. Charlie Camarda, the astronaut's always like, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. And, we're all like, you've been to space. Come on. You worked for NASA. You're not dumb. But that's what every one of them comes in, but they get excited because everybody's working with somebody, meeting everybody. So we decided to have some Friday Zoom meetings. We didn't think anything of it. People were just interested in meeting each other. And what we found was that they weren't just meeting each other, they were doing things together. So lateral mentoring is mentoring not in a hierarchical way that we're used to. This is a term that I coined. I write about it, I talk about it. It is something that if you look at the hierarchical mentoring model, this is the typical one. And we set out to look at that, right? We were having a mentor and a mentee. But the lateral mentoring is much, much more powerful. More explosive ideas come out of lateral mentoring. Lateral mentoring is I want everybody to look to your left and now look to your right. You're looking at your next mentor. This is how it happened with Steve Bellevin and with Bill Cheswick. Meet your mentor. So, so if we look at how this has happened in life and in science and in research and in technology, it wasn't in an upward way. It was always lateral. So when Bill was doing the internet network firewall, he was tasked as getting that done as his job. And so he was like, oh, I hit a wall. I can't do anymore. And he was stuck for a while. So he got himself in his wheelie chair, office chair, and he wheelied himself over to Steve Bellevin. And he said, Steve, I know you know stuff I don't know. Can you teach me? And do you think you could help me to get to where I need to go with this? Steve didn't benefit from helping Bill with his job, but he wanted to, just like all of us do. We like to connect with our friends and help them out. And that's all we think of it. We don't realize that we're mentoring them. We're taking our expertise and giving it to them. So he ended up becoming the internet firewall in a book later and all of that. But that's typical of how things happen and how they work. So what we found was that the mentors were getting together and just organically doing this. Nobody was checking. But it turned out a few months later, we found out that two unlikely mentors got together and they published in Nature. We had a puppeteer who matched up with a chemical engineer and they wanted to teach things through puppetry. We had an astrophysicist who matched up with a finance guy and they were writing a science fiction book. We also had several companies that came out of it with people that were completely unlikely pairs. And it's because they were able to utilize the expertise of the others in there. It was like putting a kid in a candy store. So this side benefit was one that we didn't expect, but it's actually more powerful than any other mentoring. All the kids that we have, impacted, this one is one to watch. And this is the one that we can do anywhere at any time, and kids can do it with kids also. So when we think of mentoring, with mentors, the sky is not the limit, it's just the beginning. This is how we usually look at mentoring, as just a road going somewhere. And that's not really what it is. It's a bunch of winding paths. It's bridges that are connecting ideas and people. It's turns to the left, it's turns to the right, it's going in a circle sometimes. Mentoring is circuitous and fluid. And everyone in here is a mentor. And everyone in here makes impact. Our most precious natural resource isn't oil, coal, or gas, it's you. Everyone in here is the most precious natural resource that we have. If your expertise is not passed on or given to somebody else, it's wasted. It's as though we didn't ever have that expertise there. And you now have the time and the ability to harness that and to give back either through volunteering, mentoring, or philanthropy. And I urge you to do this. I urge you while you're here to look at those around you as potential mentors, as potential individuals with expertise who can help you to get your idea out and also to help others. The best way to mentor others is by not waiting for somebody to ask, but by asking, how can I help you? Is there something I can do to help you? And that's because most people feel that if you're going to ask somebody uh, for help, you're burdening them. You're not. Most people, if somebody asks you for something and you'll say, yeah, sure, you're my friend. Of course I will. Just like Steve Bellevin helped out Bill Cheswick. So, in this next chapter, the second half of your lives, I'm hoping that you will have the most generative life possible. And I open this up now to any questions anybody might have. Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Ken? Oh, hold on. I think I have to pass this.
Thank you. Hello, is it on? Hello.
I don't think the cube is on.
Hello. Awesome. Great. Thank you for the presentation. It was great. The one question I had when you showed the two charts of, the climb and then the decline.
Yep, let
and
me
the
bring it
word,
back. This
and,
one?
yeah, the one on the left and the
Mhm.
word association and the negative words. Was that just in Western culture, or like if you went to Bhutan, would they have a different perspective of wisdom and
I do not know the answer to that because I did not look at that research. However, I will say that when we look at depression, for example, we know that it's everywhere. Do we know how people unconsciously think about it? No. But I would say that that would be something that now I'm going to go look at because now I'm curious. But I don't know. But one other thing though is that yes, there are cultures that value wisdom, and that is part of what is on this trajectory. I do think that if we engage more with our wise elders, that we are able to engage in generativity. So I don't know if that answered your question. I don't know what's happening in Eastern culture as much. I also don't know, because we've seen this in some research, is that you can have something in place and it looks like it's great, but unconsciously it's not, so that it's working well. I would assume that it is working well, but I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us a new lens to look at our journey through. That's a gift. For the good of the whole, I wanted to share a hack on mentorship. I was mentorship chair for EO and then YPO. And where it came off the rails was, well, I'll just give you the hack. When someone asks you to mentor them, the first thing to say is, absolutely, this is my cell phone number. You are going to call me. I will pick up the phone and you are going to have the agenda. Because what happened was people wanted to help, but they didn't know how to help.
Yeah.
So putting it in the lap of the mentee and saying, it's your responsibility to have a question and to call me, it lit everything up. So just a simple hack.
That's a great hack.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah, for that question on that slope there, the physical activity.
This one?
Yes, on the
Yeah.
left. Is your research showing, or have you done any research into, is that not quite as steep as it was, say, 30 years ago? I look at my good buddy Zellman here, who's what, 75?
Yeah.
At 70, our forum group downhill mountain bike at high speed on his birthday. Would that have happened? And he does triathlons. Would that have happened? Are we looking at our lives
We are
differently?
looking at a longer,
Yeah.
healthier trajectory.
Yeah.
And we should expect If you go Google, you'll find 80-year-old bodybuilders. You'll find people that are doing all kinds of really amazing things at in up to 100. My mother-in-law is an example. She plays volleyball and she's 97. So I don't know how she does it, but but at any rate, I would say that this is going to be a lower one, but we do all get to hear. So but you are correct, and we are seeing that, and that was what I never looked at, and now we should be focusing on.
This is probably a terrible analogy, but I love food, and I like Italian food, Chinese food, steaks, all that stuff. And one of the things I regularly do is make sure I have an assortment of things I love to eat all week long with friends, And but one of the things that I just realized in this presentation is, in the same way, mentoring is one of the things that I really value and look at. But I just haven't had a mentoring place to go, in a
Right.
sense.
You're not alone. It's an epidemic.
And in your presentation, while you were doing that, I wrote out a whole structure and place to go and way of doing it, involving other people. I don't know where the hell it came from, but I'm happy it did.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And I
Yeah,
hope
thank you.
I hope you'll share it with me.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely great.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I really appreciated the lens that you were talking about, lateral mentorship. That kind of opened up something for me. And I'm curious the conditions that you found that kind of encourage that, whatever that is. How does that come about? You gave some examples of things that happened, but what are the preconditions that really foster that really allow that to happen?
Lack of structure.
Mm.
So I went to a hackers convention, in Silicon Valley, and I was there with to study mentoring. And this is where I really understood lateral mentoring. It was a whole bunch of people who, were in an enormous facility that was that had everything that you would need not to have to leave. It was filled with food, and every curious individual there was looking to learn from others. There was no structure. You could stay up all night if you wanted. They had dinner at midnight. Like there was all this stuff happening. And in that event where I was, I asked the guy who created Python, I said, "How'd you do it?" And it was completely lateral mentoring. It's open source. He was like, "We build it so that it'll be just people helping people all over the place." And he wasn't alone. It was everybody that had built or developed something that they all had no boundaries. There was no structure put on it. Nobody said, "Hey, I want you to do this in this time." It was, I'm curious and I want to find out something that excites me.
Thanks so much again. On the physical side, so it's extending. Have you seen research in terms of whether cognitive things like Alzheimer's and dementia, and things like that, are also taking longer for people to get, or are they actually still the same? And so we're seeing kind of more disability there.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up because I only put two things up here, and cognition is obviously there. Um, but yeah, cognition is changing. We're seeing so many changes from all the research in how Alzheimer's that is making it, and dementia. We're also, there's a lot of cognitive issues that happen when a person is depressed. So yeah, our cognitive trajectory is getting better as well. One thing, and I could go on forever and ever about fluid and crystallized intelligence and all of that. We ride off of our innate knowledge that we have pretty long and pretty far. But the one thing that we do know that happens with cognition that helps it is exercise and staying mentally fit. And that means engaging with others, doing your lateral mentoring, but getting engaged in things that work your brain. So yeah, that trajectory can change.
Thank you for the presentation. It was awesome. I have a question, and I don't remember the exact dollar amount. I think you said $547.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I was curious. Like, my first question was like, what happened with that? They have no really little money. How did that kind of move along? Because in thinking about like my takeaway was, hey, go to my kids and let's give them limited resources and ask them to do something interesting with it.
Yeah.
That was like my takeaway, and I'd love to hear kind of a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for bringing that up. I didn't highlight that, and I will right now. What we did was we took that $547. We needed to be able to incorporate. It was like 400 something to be able to do that. And we needed some other things, but we were fortunate that we had lawyers that were on board who volunteered their time. That money has multiplied and multiplied and multiplied every year because of philanthropy. So, we sent, um, uh, you know, Justin to Africa because of philanthropy. Um, I would love to get kids to come in and solve that or to do that. I'd love to bring them into the innovation lab and have that happen because this to me is a social experiment in a way. And so we didn't come into it with trying to make a ton of money. But if a kid has an idea, I would welcome that. And I would love to be able to see what they could do with that. Similar to the ideas that people presented about how they had their children to get a certain amount of money and what would they do with it. Um, but we haven't done that yet. We're still newish.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, that was just the setup, and then there was a bunch of volunteers and people raised money around it.
Yeah, what happened was because we're mentor focused. So if we get a project that comes along and it needs money, we raise the money for it. So Justin went to Africa. Now Justin's working with a bunch of people who volunteered and came on board to raise money to get him to go to Africa again.
Hmm.
And they want to be able to send even more art supplies with him next time. And so it's like going to cost like $20,000-$30,000 for next year. So they're starting now to fundraise. So each person who has their, as I was calling it, the Make-A-Wish for a mentor, each one is like its own independent project so that mentor gets to fulfill their legacy how they want to. So, could we, each year, more and more volunteers came on. It wasn't just mentors. We have a ton of lawyers. We have a bunch of IP lawyers who volunteer their time so that when kid wants to innovate, they can do it for free. We ended up getting Naval Postgraduate School that came on and said, hey, we want to be able to have our students come to you and get some resources. We do that. Each pod, though, is an independent running kind of a pod over, under an umbrella that we have.
Understood. Thank you.
Mhm.
Cool. Oh, I'm not going to throw anything.
Oh, here.
My shoulder's bad.
Okay. Can I throw it to you? Oh, thank you.
Ready?
Thank you. This is my first time with the box. This is exciting. Thank you. That was terrific. And so much of what you're talking about is in parallel with what we're doing at MEA. And I would love to talk to you about collaborating on some
Absolutely.
of that. And if the room is open to a hack, we have another hack at MEA that's been really powerful for us. And it's the idea of intergenerational collaboration. Chip says he loves to intern publicly and mentor privately. So that idea of curiosity that we've been talking about all week, staying curious, continuing to learn, not being afraid to learn publicly, ask someone young is a way to open that pathway. And I bet everyone here has asked their kids for tech help.
I know it may not be appropriate, but there's a joke about a guy goes to the doctor and the doctor says to him, I think you have Alzheimer's and cancer. And the guy says, thank God I don't have cancer.
My husband tells that joke all the time. That's so funny. Anybody else? Thank you all. Oh, yeah. Oh, oh.
Knock the mic right out of the box.
Deborah, first of all, we're neighbors. So
That's right.
I'm going to follow up with you
Long
back
Island.
home. Yeah, Strong Island. How could we help you?
If you would like to help, there are several ways. One is if you have an idea, bring it to us. We're always looking to have help with our projects getting funded to get people to go do the things that they want to do. If there is a legacy project in your life, bring it to us. We want to hear it and we want to make it happen. And if you have kids that need to be mentored, it's free. We don't charge. This is something that if you have a school that's interested, if you have any kids who want to work with some of the top people in the world, bring them on. We're ready. So the other thing is, if you feel like volunteering at all, come on board. We're fun people. That's right. Thank you. Thank you,
All
everyone.
right, thank you all.